Alright, today we're talking about circumference and arc length. Circumference you've used and seen before, that's the distance around a circle. Alright, arc length is a portion of the circumference of a circle. So if you think of a piece of pizza, a piece of pie, it's the crust. You know, the arc length is that piece, the length of the crust for your piece. Alright, that's what arc length is. The equation for circumference you have seen before, this is not new. There's two ways to write it. Circumference equals pi times diameter. And diameter again goes from one point on the circle to another point on the circle through the center of the circle. Or the equation can be rewritten as c equals 2 pi r, and r stands for the radius, which is from the center of the circle to a point on the circle. Alright, some real quick easy problems using circumference. Alright, find the indicated measure. Circumference of a circle with radius 11 meters. Alright, so this is what we have. We have a circle, we have a radius of 11 meters. Alright, and we want to find the circumference of that circle. So circumference equals 2 pi r, and I want to use that equation because they give me the radius. So substituting that value, 2 pi r is 11 meters. So the circumference equals, well, 2 times 11, that's 22 pi meters. That would be the exact answer, 22 pi, or the approximate answer would be plug it into your calculator and actually use the pi button unless you are otherwise told otherwise. Alright, 69.12 meters. Alright, exact answer, approximate answer. Alright, know the difference. Alright, very good. The radius of a circle was circumference 18 yards. Alright, this is kind of going in reverse. Alright, so again, you have a circle, but now we're trying to find the radius. We don't know the radius, but we know the circumference is 18 yards. Well, we're talking about circumference. We need the radius. I'm using this same equation. C equals 2 pi r. C is 18 yards, 2 pi r. Solve for r. Well, I'm going to divide by 2 pi because that's just a number. Divide by 2 pi. Over here, 2 pi divided by 2 pi, that's 1, equals 18 divided by 2 is 9 divided by pi. That would be the exact answer. The approximate answer. Alright, again, you're taking 9 divided by second pi. 2.86 yards. Okay? Solving for the circumference given the length of the radius. Solving for the radius given the length of the circumference. Alright, the dimensions of the skateboard wheel shown at the right are in millimeters. To the nearest meter, how far does the wheel travel when it makes 35 revolutions? Okay, so we got to think about this revolution. What does revolution mean? Well, revolution means if the wheel's touching the ground here, and you start rolling that wheel in this direction. What happens? Well, this point that's touching slowly moves around that circle, right? As the wheel is moving along. So a revolution would be, when does that point get back down to the bottom? You know, it's traveling. When does it get down back to the bottom again? You know, when you're rolling that wheel, okay? That would be a revolution. So what is that distance then? From here where it started, that's the start point, and here would be the end point. You know, it went around the wheel as the wheel rolled down the road. When does it touch the ground again? Okay? That would be 1 revolution. So we're thinking about that. Now, so what do we need? Well, we need circumference, because basically, you know, keeping this and standing still, it's when that point gets back to the beginning. Alright? So a revolution is circumference. So circumference equals 2 pi r, or c equals pi times diameter. Now in this one, I'm going to use this equation, the second equation. The diameter is, well, from this point all the way across, that's 20, 20, that's 40, 55. 55 pi millimeters. Right? That's 1 revolution. and that is in millimeters. They told us the dimensions are in millimeters. Okay? So that's circumference for one revolution. That's one revolution. How do we find 35 revolutions? We would simply take 55 pi times 35. And that'll give us 35 revolutions. Alright, so 55 times 35, we get 1925. Pi. And that's millimeters. Now, problem is they want the answer to the nearest meter. Okay, so we have an answer of 1925 pi millimeters. That we can write that as 1 times, well, 1 meter is the same as how many millimeters? And that would be 1,000 millimeters, right? So we take millimeters divided by millimeters, that's 1. They cancel each other out. Multiply your fraction. You get 1925 pi times 1, so 1925 pi. And meters divided by 1 times 1,000 is 1,000. Alright, so to the nearest meter, that means we have to multiply that and then divide by 1,000. So 1925 times pi, which is 6,047.57. Alright, and I'm not erasing that answer out. And then divide by 1,000. Alright, and I'm not erasing that number off my calculator. I just divide by 1,000 right away. So to the nearest meter, 35 revolutions is about 6 meters. That's the nearest meter. Alright, so either you plug in that into your calculator or divide it by 1,000. There are 3 zeros. Move your decimal point 3 spots. 1, 2, 3. 6.047. So the nearest meter would be 6 meters. Alright, arc length. Arc length we set up as a ratio and then write a proportion. It's a ratio of the arc length divided by the circumference, part, divided by whole. Okay? The arc length AB, arc AB, that's how we label it, arc AB, AB, and then the arc symbol. Alright, so the arc length of arc AB divided by the circumference equals the measure of the arc, the angle measure here, divided by 360. Again, that would be the part, that's the whole thing. There are 360 degrees in a circle. Alright, so you can always set up your ratios and set them equal to each other. Alright, so here we go, arc length of arc AB. So we got arc length of arc AB divided by the circumference. Circumference is 2 pi r. 2 pi, and the radius is 2. Equals the measure of the arc divided by 360. And again, how do you solve a proportion? Okay, we cross multiply, right? So 2 times 2, that's 4. 4 times 88. 88 times 4, we get 352 pi equals 360 times the arc length of the unknown here. Okay? Well, we're solving for arc length, right? So divide by 360. Divide by 360. So arc AB is going to equal 352 times pi, and then divided by 360. And we get 3.07. And that was meters. Alright? Next one. They want the measure of the arc now. So now they're telling us the arc length, which is from R to S here, that's 38 feet. Alright, I know that because where it's written in between R and S here. So that's telling me that's the arc length. So the arc length is 38 feet divided by the circumference, 2 pi, and the radius is 12.3, equals the measure of the arc. So now we're talking about the angle measure, and then divided by 360. Solve our proportion. Okay? Here we get 24.6 pi, times the measure of the arc equals 360 times 38, 13,680. Alright, divide by 24.6 pi, divide by 24.6 pi. So the measure of the arc, RS, equals 13,680 divided by 24.6 pi. 177.01 degrees. Alright, it's the measure of the arc, it's an angle measure, so we have the degree symbol. Alright, conveyor belt for luggage, a luggage rack at an airport. Alright, what is the outer part of the belt forms a 180 degree arc at each end. Okay, so right here, through this point, that is a 180 degree arc. Through this point, that is a 180 degree arc. So, if those are 180 degree arcs, what are those? Okay, if that's a 180 degree arc, what is that shape there that I have drawn, as well as up there? And they are a half circle. Okay? So essentially we have a half circle here, we have a half circle here, and they have the same radius. So then we essentially have a full circle. So this curved distance here, alright? For example, the arc, the radius is 8 feet, approximate distance around the belt if the coin was going around the outer edge of this thing. So we want to find the distance all the way around there. So let's think about this. That distance, that total distance, is going to equal the circumference of our circle plus the straight edges, right? The two straight edges. Here's a straight edge, and there's a straight edge. Alright, so the total distance is going to equal 2 pi, and the radius of our circle is 8, because it's going to the outer edge of the circle, not the inside, alright? That would be the radius to the inside. We need the radius to the outside. So the radius is 8, plus the straight edges is 40. So the total distance is going to equal, that's 16 pi plus 40, and that's feet. That would be the exact answer. Or you take 16 times pi, and then plus 40, we get 90.27. feet. Round to the nearest foot, so it's about 90 feet. Okay? Alright. Please come to class with any questions you may have, and we'll talk later. Thanks.